Hello everybody and welcome to episode 14 of the Wakefield to Knottingley building series. Today we're going to be continuing our scenery work that we were doing around Featherstone and carrying on with this area of foliage and then putting in some of the smaller details that we've been thinking of putting in once we get away from the trackside. So we got this area of foliage to do. This was the first scenery that we actually put onto the route, so episode 13 is where we talk about what was going on there and stuff like that. Episode 14 we're just going to crack on with what we were doing, and that is to keep putting this grass down the side. I never did actually do it outside the episode, so might as well just do it now inside the episode. All I'm doing here, again I covered this in episode 13, just dropping grass into the banking, rotated already using a local rotation down here. Again, that one was gone over in episode 13. I won't keep going over it in continuous episodes because once you hear the same thing about 17,000 times, I imagine it'll get a bit tedious. So all I've done is just put it on local rotation, turned it sideways and plopped it on the side of the bank in there. Now once again I need to get the cab ride video that I have up and running. So bear with me whilst I find that. So looking at the banking here, it's more or less grass on the side of it, with again quite a dense sort of shrubs and stuff on the side down here. So on this side we'll use the Southampton to Bournemouth embankments, and we'll shove them down there in the grass. The remainder obviously of it is actually inside underneath the track, but that doesn't matter because it's not seen by the people driving the route. So it's just buried under there. I'm just pressing J there to bring it up to track level, to bring it up to terrain level. If you press J, it snaps any asset to the terrain height. So such as there, you can see me doing it. I always drop them down a little bit into the ground, just to make sure there's no bits of them floating. So we've got that in. Now I'm just going to check the cab ride video and have a look and see what sort of shrubbery we've got going on the side, and we have got some rosebay herbs sort of up this end of the banking, which I'll drop in now. Just have a look at some of these other things that we've got as well. There's quite a few little cool grass types that we can use and stuff like that. I'm not going to be using trees at the minute there. Just looking for the rosebay willow in this list. I must have passed it there. There we are. Passed it about 6 times then. So we've got that dropped in there. Adds a little bit of colour in, as much as anything is what it's doing. Just so it breaks up the monotonous sort of grass look, and we're going to add some bushes and stuff in. We're going to do that as per Google Maps that we can see. So before we do that, we've already done the ones here, look, so we've got one here to put in. And where it's not a continuous line of trees, where it's sort of scattered, I do like to place them individually. And swap them around and place different ones and stuff like that as well. So that we get different ones. There's a couple more there behind the Google overlay thing. We'll swap round which ones we're placing. Place a couple of beech bushes there. And you can see now we're starting to get a little bit of sort of differences on the banking there. So we've got one halfway at the top, sort of a little one here actually. There's a little bush to go in here. I'm going to use the scale tool to scale this one down a little bit. And drop it in down there. And then you got another reasonably small one up on the banking up here. Which I'm just rotating now so I can drop it onto the banking side like so. And then we can place that one there. And then looking down here, there is a more of a line sort of forming, so we can actually use one of the bush lines here to recreate that. a small tree in here. And, rotate a little bit and stuff like that. Just breaks it up a bit so it doesn't all look the same. 2 trees there. And that one's a little bit of a bigger one. Back in the days when my dad used to live around here, just up there, these were his granddad's allotments. I say his dad's allotments at the time, and he used to get photos of steam locos passing here back in the 60s, and there was actually no trees at all in those days. Now it's quite a short tree lined in. So I'm interested to backdate it to those days, personally speaking. Partly because of how much more interesting traffic you will be able to use on this route, so maybe that's an option for one day. These days there's a monotony of units and biomass trains, really. Back in the day, obviously, before 1992 it was freight only over here, so it was a monotonous amount of coal traffic, really. Other than when East Coast diversions were taking place from the Leeds line, which was quite often, most weekends actually, for many years. So we're on side for the sun, so you can't really get the full effect, but overall I'm pretty happy with how that's looking. I think we're now ready to start looking at putting in some more of the lofts and stuff and buildings and whatnot around this side. So this garden continues over here. So we'll put that in next. But it's actually, it looks like it's more of a hedge on this corner, so let's look for the hedge tall and put this in as a loft. I've never used this loft before, so let's see what happens when we use that. I mean, it's not that tall, but it'll do. Looks pretty decent. Good enough anyway to be using, certainly. Just gonna watch again with the sort of breaking in the loft. There you go. So that's net placed in. That placed in, so not net. Got another fence that needs to go in here, and then we'll put the housing and stuff in, and then that's when we can really start to let the creative freedom start. Because until this point, you're sort of working to what you can see. Once you start getting your houses and stuff, and you can, you know, let your creative freedom go a bit more. I'm gonna actually extend this road first, though. See what we've got. Not that one. So this is an example with DTG again, why they're using Kuju roads when they have better ones that they put in the library since then. I don't quite understand it, but we'll use the... I've used the wrong one there. I didn't mean to use the Academy one there. We'll use the Woodhead BR one. Just a single concrete road. And that'll take us up to where the main road will start there. I won't be bothering with pavements particularly on this little bit of road because it's not really got them. It's pretty much a country lane. So the next thing for us to do is to put the fencing in around those houses. I'm just trying to get a decent view of them. It looks like it's a small brick wall actually on this bit there with a gap for the garden fence. So we're going to offset the wall from the road at a 4 metre offset. Let's have a look, see what walls we've got. Very hard to find decent looking walls. I mean, we don't want like that. We're hedge low. We definitely didn't want that. Woodhead walls, brick rim is one I do often use, but I don't like it in this position. I definitely don't like that. I think looking at it, we might be best going with the small 3D bush and then carrying it on down there as well. So I'll go across and down, a bit like it does in real life. I'm going to extend this garden fence as well across into the driveway of this house. Same there. I'll put it in. Okay, so we've got this fence in now. So that's the entrance to the garden that's put in. Next up we need to put the actual house itself in. Just looking at the height of the terrain there to see what needs to happen. Potentially might need to lower and rearrange that a little bit. See what sort of houses we've got to place in this gap. I'm not actually sure if it's a bungalow or a house, to be honest. I'll try and get it as right as I can when it's right next to the track. It's a big bungalow and we don't have anything really like that, so I think the best thing to do will be a house. Probably something like that. Even though it's not the right shape, it's probably going to be about as good as we can get. Hard to say, I mean it is quite a long building, but it's only one house, not two. Normally I wouldn't bother with stuff too much if it wasn't so close to the track, but it's right next to the track. Without selecting 10,000 requirements, which I don't really want to do. What about bungalows? Maybe a bungalow. Probably is going to be the best look there, even if the bungalows we've got are pretty old. Something that we do need more new ones of. Next up we need to look at the garage. So we find a family garage and we place that in next to the house. Make sure the house is not floating at any point. It doesn't really matter if the door's slightly sunk on one side, unless it's facing directly at the track, which in this case it's facing away from the track. So what else can we pick up from this garden? There's not really much going on. There is a trampoline in there, so we can put in a trampoline. We've got one of those in the JT Common Library, so drop that in, make it a bit small and then drop it down. Maybe rotate it a bit as well, so it's more even in its placement. Of course, now we've put the garage in, we can actually put a car outside the garage as well. So I'll do that. Not too concerned that the tyres are slightly going to be sunk on one side because of the way the land is around this house. Bungalow, should I say. Pretty happy with that. So what we can do on the back side of the house, we can put a bench in. Hopefully anyway. There we go. So we can put a bench in, garden bench. And if we can find a person, we're going to put a person sat on it. Depending on whether we have any available people, which unfortunately they're a little bit hard to come by at times. I'll put this woman sat on this bench. I'm just going to check something to see whether I've actually got the packs I selected showing. Yeah, I have. Okay. So now I'm having trouble selecting this woman. Her point of origin isn't quite correct, so I'm just going to have to lower the bench, unfortunately. Don't know where her point of origin actually is. It's nowhere near where she is, that's one thing for certain. Don't even know where it is. Anyway, we'll carry on putting the garden fences in. So we've got a fence to put in down this side next, which links from that bush there through to the back of the garden. And then this garden will be more or less done. It's the wrong fence that I've just put in there. Trying to vary some of the colours as well. Case now of trying to... I should have done this fence before the foliage really, but not a major issue at all. So that's the first little house placed. Looking at, well, obviously paint the terrain and stuff around that. And by no means is that going to necessarily be a final look for it, but it's in there. You get all the scene with the train coming through the bushes, between the bushes, sorry. Just need to make the gap in the bushes there for the way into the house. Then we've got another line of bushes here that goes in front of this house, but this is a slightly taller set. And this links up to their driveway. Just check it's not clipping through the fence at this end, which it is slightly, so what we need to do here is just move it slightly to the right. Let's untick that. There we go. Just move that slightly across so it wasn't clipping through the fence. And next up we need to do very much the same, but we've got a garden gate that we can put on here, so we'll do that next. Which is that one, the gate without the sign. That's their driveway gate. And carry on with the hedges to link up with that one on that side of their garden. Do that again because I went a bit too far through with it. It's better. And then this one, I think this one's a house, not a bungalow, in the corner. So we'll be able to put a house in here. Like so. And they've again got a garage at the bottom of the garden and a garden shed. We haven't put a garden shed in the other garden actually, so that's something that we need to do. And we're going to put a different garden shed in here as well. Get a different garage in here, sorry. Put a JT one in. Just mixes in the types. Put a brick one in there. Just provides a different little look there. And then we can get a garden shed from this selection. Place that, face it the right way. We'll put some garden furniture in the garden. On this one we'll put some benches, seats. The house is actually floating, which needs to be taken care of. So what we can do with this is bring the terrain in this little point up here. So we can get a 10 brush on the point selection tool, the height selection tool, and just pull it up to there. So it's not floating, same on this point here. There, so none of it's floating. Obviously that means now that this is buried, so we're just going to pull that up. Then it's looking a lot better all around. There. So now the garden is level, and those are the micro adjustments that I was on about in episode 13, where you can just adjust stuff throughout the, when you're putting actual detail in to make things a little bit better. Not going to bother putting a car in this driveway. We'll leave the car off this driveway. Just going to look through some of these and see if we can find a pagoda thing. So we've got a pagoda thing there. And there we go. I'm going to have all those with it though, so I don't really want all those with it. Just see if there's a... I think all the DTG stuff's basically the same, so I'll probably have to go with all three. Like so. So we've got those placed in, so that's second garden detailed. Again, we've got to paint all the terrain around it. But you get the idea. So these are the allotments now. Allotments in TS, they are a little bit finicky. You've got sort of basically set allotments you have to place. You can't just go, unfortunately, sort of custom making them, so to speak. You've got to put in what's provided. So bearing that in mind, I'm going to place in, you got two types on these Southam to the Bournemouth assets. So I'm going to place in the smaller one here. Just trying to make sure by rotating it that the terrain's not showing through anywhere, because they are quite nice models. And what you can do as well is you can rotate them different ways. So I can rotate that one the opposite way, so it doesn't all look the same. It's all mirrored, and it doesn't just reflect. You know, it doesn't just have the same symmetry on all sides. It's from the cab it'll look like you're driving past different allotments. Because if I just placed it all facing the same way, it just look like it's the exact same thing copied and pasted. Which it is, but we can do better than that. So again, I'll rotate it back the other way. There's only really two ways you can rotate it, obviously, but when we get down here, it'll should look okay. We can break it up with other little details as well, such as bushes and stuff like that. Put some cars in the area in the middle. Okay, this is the last one that I'll be putting in. On this side, and we've got another one to put in over there somewhere. There we go, we've got the allotments in. So as you're driving along, you can't really tell that that's the same allotment, just rotated every so often. You can sort of see it repeating a little bit there, but it's not too bad. Got room for one more possibly. Hopefully just here. The road's going to be very narrow through the middle though. Because we can't go any further really away from it, but it's not too bad. Seen worse. And we've got another one to put in up here, so we can again rotate that way, so it's another different direction, and then put this one on. In that direction. Obviously it does clip the house in there a little bit, but once we've finished tidying stuff up here, you won't actually notice that. And the only way you would notice something like this is you went into Google Earth. And that's simply a case of working with what you've got in Train Sim. You can't really do much else about it. I can move this slightly this way, obviously, but it's still going to be clipping a bit where the line of trees is. So we've got our flattened off virtually. Next job's going to be to do the fencing and stuff around this. I'm not sure what this little building is, like some sort of a Nissen hut sort of thing. I'm not sure what it is. Some sort of greenhouse perhaps. But I don't believe we have anything really suitable to place there from what I remember. So for now we'll leave that off. And put on the continuation of this bush. Remember there's a gate just here, which is where you gain access to the allotments. So we'll put another one of these gates on. And then we'll bring the bush this way a bit more. And this would be about the extremity of where I'd want to be having using a 3D bush. Beyond this point, I'm probably trying to use 2D more than 3D if possible. And this distance away from the track, but as it's a continuation of the same one, it's going to be making more sense to just use the same one really. So what can we put in here? We've got like there is some bushes and stuff in there, so what we can do is we can just put a group of bushes in there. Like so. I've actually gone for the fence a bit there, so I like that idea. Should be able to find some loose hawthorn bushes amongst this lot somewhere. Or maybe not. It's always helpful when you can't find that. And again, that's part of working within the restrictions of train system. You've only got so many things that you can really do. What we can do is we can put some bushes in here though. And that's just to try and break up the greenness of that flat grass a little bit. So there's not just grass everywhere, just flat terrain. Unfortunately I ain't finding any. Oh, there's the hawthorns, there we are. So we can just place a few of these in here. See, I'm looking at that now and I think 3D would actually look better there. In a position like that, where you've got the 3D allotments and the garden detail and everything, it's probably going to be more sensible to use 3D bushes in this area rather than 2D. Just to give that better look. Don't go over the top with them, just place 3 in there. Move them around so they use the space wisely. You can change the size a bit more and it makes them, you know, there's only 3 there, but it sort of looks like there's more, blocks off more space. So we got, change music. We got these houses and stuff to put in next, but we need to put a dirt track in for the actual allotments as well. Although having thought about it, maybe we can just paint that in. It might look better just painted. We've got like a wall and a fence at this end of there. There's also a hut that needs to go in as well, if we can find something suitable, that is. And it's a case of whether we can actually do that or not. One of the rare occasions where there's actually a decent asset in the Kuju selection that we don't really have in anything else. Maybe a case of using a porter cabin or something like that. Even then, it's not quite the right size. We can use this little hut Place 2 of these together. And that'll do the job. Just place them a little bit further up than where they actually are in real life. And then we can put the fence out the back of there to where the houses will be, but we need to put the houses in first because of all this being a little bit off kilter from where it should be. It's going to make more sense to put the houses in first. Not going to bother putting traffic on this road because it's a pretty quiet street. Just going to lay the street down there. I'm not going to put pavements on it either because it's, you know, it's a decent distance from the track. The track's right up there. It's not something that we need to be worrying about putting pavements on when you're behind a row of houses. I only generally do that if it's pretty much within, you know, sight distance of the track or an aerial camera view. Otherwise, I generally just put the road in. Okay, so we got the first road in there. Now this is a row of old brick houses mainly, although there is the odd different coloured one. So you got 2 here that's detached from the rest, they are brick. And with this sort of thing I do always try and put the right coloured houses in when they're in full, you know, sight of the track if possible. It's not something I get too hung up on, but I'm all for extra immersion. So I'll put these 2 in, these are brick. Put those there. And then the next 2, which is where my dad lived for about 40 odd years. White houses. Though the best we can probably do is going to be a stone house, I reckon. See what we got. I've actually got something in the JT library these days which could be used, perhaps, and that is, mind you, this should be 2 houses there. Have a look through. That'll do. And then it's essentially brick for pretty much all the rest of the row. There's a couple of different ones, but by that point you're behind that row of houses, so it doesn't matter quite as much. They are terraced houses, so we should have a block of them somewhere around this lot that we can use. There, terrace block 1. And these are nice and easy just to drop in there. The only issue we've got is they're on a slight slope, so the doorways at that end will be slightly buried. And you can rotate slightly, but you don't want to rotate too much because if you rotate a lot, you obviously end up then with houses on a hill sort of thing, which isn't ideal. And we're going to need to do some manipulation on that end of the actual back garden stuff, so it's not floating. Now we'll go a little bit long on this end with slightly too many houses, probably 1 too many houses. There. And just remember that those houses are going to be behind a row of houses anyway. But we do need to look with the torch on and just see that there it's floating at the back. So we just need to pull up the various bits of terrain so that we don't have floating houses at the back. And that's not really what we want. These ones are nice because they've got the actual, that one's actually got additional height underneath so it doesn't float anyway. That looks like it's floating a bit to me. Oh, no, it's not, it's a weird shadow on it. So those are in, we need to put all the detail on the back of them on yet, so which will come. So next up we've got, there's a lane goes through the middle of these houses. Now, this is going to be an interesting bit of positioning that we're going to have to do here. How exactly we go about it. We're going to be best putting the lane in slightly this way and then moving everything slightly this way towards the right hand side. We can put in a road from the woodhead again. Just a single track road. Probably should have put that lane in first, but not too worried. And this is still adding the basic detailing really. We can go to town with the more final details as we're getting along towards that phase. This is just the basic placement of housing and stuff. I like to create little scenes every so often just so that people have got eye candy so they can get screenshots and stuff like that. I do like to make routes that have got high screenshot potential. Even if it's something that not many people are going to see. Just to give people something to look at. The reason I like to do that sort of thing is that when I drive over people's routes, I like to drive it like Railways of Devon and Cornwall was one. Where you drive it and then you'll drive it again a few weeks later and you think, oh, I didn't notice that the first time. You know, you keep seeing new bits that you didn't notice when you first drove it. So what we're looking at here then is a row of houses. It's a more modern row actually than what we've been doing. So this row here. Again, it's pretty much the same sort of housing. They're actually more modern houses down there. What am I doing? So you got more modern. These houses were built in the 80s, early 80s. These are the more original sort of housing. And this music is getting around my nose at the minute, so I'm just going to skip that track. So I'm going to drop this row in here. Again, like I said before, I'm just going to bring them this way a bit so we've got room for the trees that need to go at the back of them. Just bringing them up slightly. And I'll move them along that way slightly as well so that they cover the entire length of the street. And then we've got to look again at the back of them just to check the gauging of the terrain because it's floating a little bit once again. So you got a single house here that needs placing first, and then we've got a couple of other sort of separate ones. And what I'm looking for is a particular sort. I know there's one in this library somewhere, a modern house that can fill that gap. There we are. Just gonna make it slightly bigger. There we go. These ones are sort of slightly set back a bit. No, they're not actually slightly forward a bit. Doing from the other row. And then these are just normal sort of brick houses. So we can use that sort. Maybe go with the JT ones for this. Makes the road a little bit longer though. So what we can do though is we can move that one across a bit more. So shuffle them all along a little bit. We can get a garage in on the end then. And again, it's a case of bringing this terrain up to the right height because it's somewhat lowered. So you can see we're starting to get a little bit of a seam built up there, which is what we're going for. I'm going to put a brick wall across the end of here. I believe that's what's there in real life. Oh, that's gone way up in the sky. So all I have to do with this is just lower it way down, so the height of it is not like the Great Wall of China, just slightly higher than that wall. I think will be correct. Although even then, I don't want it to look like a. It looks out of place. Does that to me? I don't like it. I am concerned really that well, not concerned, but it is a bit of a shame that we don't really seem to have a really good set of brick walls. Like this one is the one I kind of use quite a lot, but it's got all this graffiti decal all over it, which is alright in an urban area, I guess. Don't look quite right in somebody's allotment though. But I think it's probably the best that we've got to go with right now. So we just need to select this because it's gone right up in the air. Just going to pull that down there. Got a bit of a gap here to fill. And we're pretty much sorted there now. So you can get a scene, or you will be able to get a scene looking across at the end of there. We've got the garage to put in on the end of this set of houses. We'll put a brick one in so it matches up with the house itself. Again, these houses, I think they were late 80s when these were built. I know my dad was annoyed when they were built because it completely cut his view of the railway off. Before then, you used to have to get a great view, but then they cut the built those and it cut the view off. Although by that time he moved out anyway, so. I think it still triggered him. That's the wrong fence again. I'm mixing up the SB and the SC assets quite a lot. That's what I'm doing there. So I'm going to put the garden fence down the back of here, but I'm not going to go too over the top because we've got a line of trees anyway to put in here. So I'm just going to put it to there. I think. Or should I carry it on? I'm wondering whether to carry on with the 3D trees on this side of the houses because it may look a little bit odd if we put 2Ds there and then make that a boundary for them. Take the garden fence to there. Gonna have about another 10 minutes on this episode, hopefully. So we'll put in a line of trees that goes along the back of here. As you can see in real life, certainly that end is quite a sort of a big line of trees. What we do need to do first. I don't need to do that first. Actually, I was going to say we're going to do something else first, but it's don't need to really. Put a couple of lines of bushes in. Just place a few actually, roughly. It's going to be better because it'll mean there's less actually placed there. In terms of FPS, my aim for my machine is to stay above 60 with that build, which should mean that people on decent PCs then get a 60 frames per second on full settings. Obviously, if you're not on a decent PC, then you may be different. But my opinion is always build for a decent PC, and then the view can look better by doing that. I remember myself when I was first starting with simulators and I didn't have a very good PC. I know how frustrating it is to be on low frames per second. So what we can do now is look at that in general sort of scheme of things. It looks pretty decent. We've got this gap here, which in real life is people's gardens. So what we can do is knock this fence off there, and we can extend the fence out towards the allotments and then do the the gardens and put a little bit of detail in there. Not much, just fencing basically, because when you get to this point away from the track, you're not worrying too much about what's going on in gardens and stuff, because you get into that point where it's probably 5% of people are going to see it, rather than the 10%. And then it is getting a bit pointless at that point. Although I do still try and put little scenes in the odd one. With this being a little bit elevated, this might be an opportunity to do something like that. We'll see. And by scenes, I just mean little bits of clutter. Just stuff that shows that it's obviously a living, breathing thing. Put a different coloured fencing so that it's not all the same fence colour. And again, just there, and then move this fence back up a bit so it's not quite clipping through the edge there. We don't want it doing that. There we go. So just need to drop this down like that, and then we got this last couple up here. And then move that one down there. Drop in the fence. And then from the track, we have a varied little scene. Obviously it's all green at the minute, it's no variation in the green terrain paint, and we can actually do that now. Because we've got a little bit of a scene built up, we can actually go ahead and do a little bit of terrain paint. So, paint the tarmac around the road there, first of all. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint around this garden. Now, this route, I'll definitely be recommending that you turn off procedural flora, because you'll end up with stupid bright yellow flowers and stuff like that if you have that on. And I always recommend having it off anyway, to be honest. It doesn't really serve any great purpose. You don't see it from the cab 90% of the time anyway. And even if you're out of the cab, it quite often doesn't look anywhere near as good as the foliage is actually there. And you end up with grass through trees and roads and stuff. Just going to paint these in tarmac because these are old yards, obviously. And these are old houses. We may put some more walls and stuff in up there just to add a little bit of detail. And this scene, again, this scene isn't finished. We need to still do, as I said, a few bits of minor detailing. But I just want to get this sort of finished off to a point where we can say it looks alright for the end of this episode. There we go, we've got a bit of terrain paint in there now. It's getting there slowly. We've got more houses that need to go in over there. We've got this driveway that needs to go into this house. And this is where terrain paint becomes a bit of a pain in the backside. So you've got to try and get it up to the garage and stuff. And terrain painting in TS is an absolute farce. I just need to use the smallest brush I can really to try and alleviate some of this leaking where it's nowhere near where it should be. But unfortunately it's still a very difficult task. Same with this one here we've got to do here. You've ended up with it there, up behind the actual garage, which isn't where we wanted it. It's a case of trying to marry it up and not spoil the overall look. Because terrain painting can be a big assist in terms of making it look better. I'm beginning to get happy with how this is looking. Nowhere near there yet, but it's looking alright. There's still all sorts of detail we can do here. Just stuff like that. Just plonk it in. And there's various bushes and stuff we haven't placed yet, I think, as well. So there should be some trees behind there. The small ones. Just like them. So those are placed. There's another one that needs to go in here, which I'll put in now. And it looks like we're getting most of that. There's a couple here that needs to go in. Now what I can do is I can do another little sim. We can say that Matey's turned up in his car. He's come to do some work in his allotment. Unfortunately, we've got a bit of a lack of actual people and stuff like that to put in. We can say that somebody down here is doing something with some cement. What have we got? Have we got anything we can put in here? Don't think we really have. Cable drums and stuff like that are always useful. Not detail that needs to be put in, but it's detail that just adds that little bit. And just builds a scene up. Yeah, so it's quite clear that time and effort has gone into it in the end of the day. Oh, that's a better portico. We can get that one here. That's a much better one. There we go. That looks better than it did before, that's for certain. And there's all sorts you can put in here. These are assets from the Steam Marketplace pack, I think it is. All sorts of little assets that you can get. And there's various stuff that Callum's done as well for our library that can be chucked in here. Stuff like pallets and various little bits. Concrete barriers, cardboard boxes, concrete barriers. These are from the Southampton to Bournemouth route. We can say there's a container being left here somewhere. And these are things that aren't necessarily there in real life, but they're just things that are plausible. They look believable. And they just add that bit of interest. We can put corrugated sheets up against a building, a fence, like just here. Mattresses. So somebody here just chucked a mattress over the fence. And because it's on an embankment here, that gives us that little bit of extra license to mess about as well, because it's raised up away from the track a bit more. A single barrel there. Got some huts. Because the track's raised up here, you're sort of looking more as a driver in passenger view. You're looking across more at what details in there. We've obviously got the completely blank terrain in the background at the minute, which is a big immersion killer. And something else you can do with assets like that, that's obviously too big, but what you can do is just dump it into the ground and then just end up with a couple of bits showing. So it varies it up a bit. Coming very much to the end of the episode now. Just having a little look through, see if there's anything else I fancy placing. I'm wary of going even any more over the top because we're already probably pushing it a bit. Could probably put in actually a builder's truck of some sort if we've got one. This one will do. So we're going to say that the builders are in by putting that lorry there. Just has that bit of life in. So eventually you'll be able to get a shot across there with all that little bit of detail going in. Doggo. Where can Doggo go? See, we've got somebody to actually place. You see, we're lacking people is the big issue. All these routes by DTG have unfortunately not really got anybody. The only fit people you get are people in HV jackets. We got this guy, but he's not exactly dressed for an allotment, is he? What we can do is we can put this guy up on a bench. If we put a bench in here, just up by the greenhouse, drop him onto it, put the dog next to him. And then on a summer's evening, when the sun's on this side, you have a nice screenshot there, just a train coming through the gap. And that's the reason I like to put these little details in. Just to bring it to life, just to give that a little bit of extra. Just a bit of extra, you know, 1% of something. But I'm quite happy with how we've done there, I think that's looking alright. Nothing stands out as being majorly wrong with it. FPS 111 at the minute. It should be, considering we've not really done anything. May need to put a pavement down there. I said I wouldn't do it. Looking at it, we may need to, because it looks you can see straight down that road from this crossing, obviously. So something to consider. Anyway, guys, that's the end of episode 14. Please do like, comment and subscribe, we appreciate that as always. If you've got any comments, then you'd like to ask questions or whatever, then don't hesitate to put them in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Don't forget, we're usually live. One of us, me or Tom, is usually live on Twitch. It's twitch.tv/trainsim_TV. And look forward to seeing you there. Thanks very much for watching, guys. Bye.